There. Now don't say I don't read your comments. Hello, me again. Now do you remember all of that merchandise that came out that was just covered in smiley faces? I'm talking like cups, phone cases, bed sheets, hats, the bucket hats, the ugly bucket hats. But did you know that all of the companies that produce those products had to pay a licensing fee to use the smiley face? Now you'd be forgiven if you assume that the smiley face was public domain given how ubiquitous it seems, but it's not. It is the intellectual property of a company known as the Smiley Company. Now this company will make sure that you know that it's their intellectual property, what with their many lawsuits. In fact, this video is about their lawsuits because the Smiley Company seems to be engaging in some very suspicious lawsuits. I'm talking bulk, seemingly indiscriminate lawsuits and the alleged shakedown of small sellers on websites such as eBay and Etsy. But before we get into that drama, we're going to find out how we got here with a short backstory of the smiley face. So the story begins back in 1971 when a young French journalist called Loufrani discovered that all of the news was becoming a little bit drab of recent. Things are a bit sad and macabre, and so what better way to raise spirits than to introduce a good news section? And what better way to accentuate the good news than with an icon that's instantly recognizable? A yellow and black smiling face. But this isn't the first time that Franklin has thought about the smiley face. In fact, months earlier, he had reached out to the French Trademark's office in order to secure the trademark for the yellow and black smiley face, thus making it his property, and if anyone wants to use it, they have to pay him for it. Now, of course, this was the early 70s, which means that the baby boomers and the hippies were starting their countercultural movements. They were opposing war and doing peaceful protest, and they were also doing a lot of drugs. That's right, the baby boomers, your favorite, your nan, was doing a lot of drugs. But do you know what the hippies loved almost as much as drugs? They loved icons. They loved the peace sign, and they loved the smiley face. Now this didn't go unnoticed by companies. Large companies like Coca-Cola and Levi Jeans realized that they wanted a piece of this pie. And so they reached out to Loufrani and they paid the licensing fee to use the smiley face on their products. But you know, once that money starts coming in, it's very difficult to stop, isn't it? And so Loufrani continues. He starts securing the trademark in more and more countries until the 90s come around and he has the trademark in over 70 countries. The success was so great that in 1997, with his son Nicolas by his side, he creates the Smiley Company, based in London, England. Now, Nicolas is the CEO of the company, but he actually has an official role, which I thought was quite funny, so I thought I'd read it out to you. Nicolas's official role in the Smiley Company is the creative mastermind, spiritual guide, beloved leader, and commander-in-chief of the happiness forces. How lovely. Now, Nicolas is no small player in this. In fact, Nicolas actually revolutionized the company because in the early 90s, the only way to convey emotion through text was in text-based emoticons, like the ASCII ones. You know, like the colon, closed bracket. That's all they had. They didn't have gripped fist and eggplant emojis. And so Nicolas, with his finger on the pulse, decides to create a series of emoticons representing every emotion that was previously conveyed in the ASCII language. He sits down with a team of New York designers and they design these. The original emoticons, the predecessor of the modern day emoji. In fact, early telecommunication companies such as Nokia, Motorola, and Sky Telemedia all reached out to get the licensing rights to use the emoticons on mobile phones back in the late 90s, making Nicolas's inventions the first emoticons on mobile phones. And so with each one of these new designs being protected and trademarked, the empire grew and the business opportunities skyrocketed, which leads us to today, where the Smiley Company has the licensing rights in over 158 countries, and they've licensed over 68 million products. Now what's interesting is, despite the amount of money that Loufrani has made from the smiley face, he didn't actually invent it. In fact, we've got pottery from almost 4,000 years ago in Turkey that has a smiley face on it, and there's plenty of early newspaper clippings like this one from 1911 that also has plenty of smiley faces on it. But of course, we're not talking about those smiley faces. We're talking about the yellow and black classic smiley. And the story for that begins back in 1963, when an artist called Harvey Ball was commissioned to do some graphics for a life insurance company when he drew this. Now you might recognize it because it is clearly the same smiley face, and it was printed everywhere. It was on leaflets and buttons, and they were distributed in the thousands. They were literally everywhere. We're talking fidget spinners and Pogs level of famous. Do Pogs? I'm so old. But importantly, the life insurance company never trademarked the image. And so it was left out in the open. And some years later, two brothers discovered one of the buttons with the smiley face on it. Two brothers called Bernard and Murray Spain. Now these brothers owned a hallmarking company, and they realized that icon would do some great on products, wouldn't they? So they reached out to the trademark office and found out there was no copyright on them. And so they secured the copyright of the smiley face, and they started printing it on millions of products, and now it really took off. It was literally everywhere. And this explains how the image could appear on this float over a year before Franklin trademarked it, and how Dunkin' Donuts had a smiley face on their leaflets over a month before he trademarked it. And so the Loufranis are very clearly not the inventors of that smiley face, so why am I talking about them? Well, I want to talk to you about the way in which the Smiley Company, owned by the Loufranis, are enforcing their intellectual property, and it seems to be very dishonest. Obviously, I have no issues with people enforcing their intellectual property. It's important, right? Trademarks are important, and if you couldn't enforce it, it would have the value of a Matt Rife autograph. But recently, it seems like Smiley has been trying to shake down small sellers on eBay and Etsy, and so now I'm going to attempt to shine some light on it for you. So here we go. Over the last couple of months, thousands of online sellers on websites such as eBay and Etsy and Redbubble have logged into their accounts to find their accounts frozen and their funds frozen pending a lawsuit from a law firm called Brickell IP, who is representing the Smiley Company. So what is the reason for these accounts being restricted? Well, let's take a look, shall we? This person from the Netherlands was being sued because they had listed a sweater on Etsy with a smiley face on it. Though the face was allegedly not yellow, it was apparently a transparent face on pink fabric. Also, it's worth mentioning that technically this person never made any sales of that product. This person had sold one pair of earrings with smiling faces on them for £9.99. This person had commissioned their own designs of happy and angry faces to be made into body jewelry out of surgical steel. This person had sold 2 badges, presumably with smiley faces on, and Brickell IP was demanding $1,000 in damages. This person had created their own smiley face design on Redbubble, which was apparently not even similar to the original smiley design. Brickell IP demanded a $5,000 settlement, and this person was selling stickers with smiley faces on, and had made a total of £11 in sales. Brickell IP, on behalf of the Smiley Company, demanded $5,000 in damages. But by far the most common cause of ending up on the receiving end of one of these lawsuits is from using the word smiley. Now that might be in the title, in the description, or even in the tags. That's right, if you use hashtag smiley in your product, regardless of if it has any smiley face in it, you might find yourself on the receiving end of a lawsuit. And so it seems that Brickell IP, this Florida-based law firm, is scouring eBay and Etsy and Redbubble and mass suing people for the use of the word smiley. But fortunately for everyone, Brickell IP are very reasonable, because if you write to them and you tell them, hey, I haven't done much, you know, I've only sold one product and it didn't have a smiley face on it, they will let you pay a settlement. But that settlement seems to be anywhere from $500 to $5,000. But if you pay this amount, then your store will be restored without any issue. Isn't that nice? But there's something really strange going on, which is that pretty much all of the recipients of these lawsuits are non-US citizens, and they're being sued by a London-based company using a Florida-based law firm. Now, why would they do this? Well, it seems to me that there's 2 reasons. The first one would be that no one in Europe would know about US law, and hiring a US lawyer when you're in Europe is very difficult and very expensive, and so people would rather take the easy route by paying the damages and having their store returned so that they can earn money again, so they can have their livelihood back. It's the easy option, especially given that if you fight the lawsuit, lawsuit is going to cost thousands anyway, and you may lose, in which case you'll have lost the thousands and your store. And number two, filing an intellectual property lawsuit in the UK and Europe is very difficult. In fact, in the UK, you have to be able to demonstrate that damages have happened. You have to be able to prove damages in order to file an intellectual property lawsuit. And of course, they can't in many of these cases because in multiple of these cases, no sales have happened. Now, all of this is very high and mighty for a company that didn't invent the smiley face, and I hate to break it to you, they didn't invent the word smiley either. In fact, the earliest use of the word smiley was from 1848. And I even found a newspaper clipping from 1953 with the word smiley on it. The intellectual property of the company continues to grow, and I imagine it will continue to grow, and the lawsuits regarding it will probably grow alongside it. In fact, I'll probably find myself on the receiving end of a few. But for example, they own over 3,000 emoticons, and it's been said that they've drawn every iteration of an emoticon that they could imagine and trademarked it in order to try and stifle the competition. Now, obviously, I can't see inside their mind, so I don't know if that's true or not, but you know, it wouldn't sound uncharacteristic of them, would it? However, if you're on the receiving end of one of these frivolous lawsuits, all you need to do is reach out to a lawyer. Do not respond to them directly because all they're going to do is try and scare you into giving them money. Instead, reach out to a lawyer. Lawyers will often offer you free advice on your first meeting, and they'll sometimes even write up letters for you to send out. Quite often, all it'll take is a letter. In fact, hundreds of these cases have been thrown out all the time just from lawyers getting involved. And obviously, I can't offer you legal advice because I'm not a lawyer, but if you were to go on Google, Google would tell you that US intellectual property laws don't apply to you if you live outside of the US. They would have to go to your country to prove damages in your country, which if it were true would make all of these lawsuits paper tigers and meaningless and just an attempt to steal your money. But that's just what Google says, not me. In many of these cases, they say that you've targeted US consumers and you've broken US law, but a lot of these cases are of people whose products have been listed on ebay.co.uk, which is a British website, and so it doesn't make any sense. And in one of these specific cases where someone had listed something on ebay.co.uk, there was a very telling detail. Allegedly, in a conversation with Brickle IP, Brickle said that they were demanding $2,000 in damages, and only $1,000 was going to Smiley Corp. The other $1,000 was going to the law firm. How nice is that? We've got a greedy company hiring greedy lawyers. What a wonderful world. And in this case, all this person was doing was selling t-shirts, and they'd used the word smiley in the title. And now they're expected to pay $2,000 to an American firm, despite the fact they haven't broken American law. Very strange, right? Very strange. In my opinion, this is all just a shakedown from Brickle IP, who are representing the Smiley Company. Now, you can do what you want with this information. I'm going to tell you what I will do with this information. I'm going to not buy products that have smiley faces on them. I realize that that doesn't do much, but to be honest, smiley faces are kind of ugly now anyway, aren't they? They've kind of fallen off. But anyway, that's the video. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something. I hope you had fun. I'll see you in the next video. Also, thanks for all the support in the last video. That was very pog. I didn't expect everyone to be so nice to me. That was very sick. Well, let's see. What am I doing? I've lost all sense of what the fuck it is I'm doing.